Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian Electricity Association's Conversation Webinar Series. The CA is the voice of the electricity industry in Canada. My name is Farhan Mirza, and I'm pleased to be your host for today's session. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which I am broadcasting you from today is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. I'd also like to recognize Canada as the land of First Peoples, Inuit, and Métis. I'd like to pay homage to the Indigenous peoples past, present, and future that continue to work, educate, and contribute to the strength of our country. I'd like to recognize that the land is shared through historic treaties, developed through contemporary treaties, and one that continues to be unceded territory. The Conversation Series features presentations from CA's corporate partners, and the series will highlight a variety of Canadian and international solutions to current and future challenges faced by our industry. Working with CA's corporate partners, these webinars have been developed to be a specific interest to those working in the electric utility space from generation through to the customer. For a list of upcoming sessions, please check out CA's website at www.electricity.ca. Before we get started today, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over. Our session today is scheduled to go from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Questions can be asked, and we encourage you to do so by typing them into the questions function on your screen. They'll be asked at the end of the presentation. A brief survey will be sent to webinar participants following the session today. Very much appreciate your candid feedback and are interested to hear any topics you'd like to have covered in the Conversation Series in the future. And before we introduce our panelists today, I would first like to welcome the CEO of the Canadian Electricity Association, Francis Bradley, to say a few words. Welcome, Francis.
Merci beaucoup, Farhan. Thank you very much. Close to 2 years ago, the world changed. The pandemic, it changed everything, and it changed many things, including how we work. And I don't just mean shifting from in office to working in our basements, our spare bedroom, or the kitchen table. We had to change how we connect with others, how we interact, how we come together, and how we work together. In 2020 at CEA, we quickly shifted how we connected with and among the membership and our corporate partners, because we didn't want to lose that enormous value we all receive through the conversations when we bring the broad and broader electricity sector together. But in the absence of board meetings and council meetings and committee meetings, the team here quickly put in place this Conversation Series. Using virtual tools, the Conversation Series sought to continue the connections between the electricity sector players, to address critical challenges, to discuss solutions, and to showcase solutions from our corporate partners. So 21 months and 42 conversations later, here we are today with our Conversation Series number 43. And as we see a gradual return to in-person events in our future, we'll not be abandoning the Conversation Series, but we'll see it continue, but as a complement to hopefully getting back to meeting in 3D. So to our CEA membership, thanks for taking the time to join us today and for joining us the past 21 months in these conversations. And a special thanks to our corporate partners who've been sharing solutions and helping the electricity sector meet the challenge of ensuring a bright future for Canadians and Canadian electricity. With that, I'll pass the baton back to my colleague Farhan, who will be our host once again today, so he can introduce the topic, our presenters from Salesforce and IBM, including a longtime collaborator of CEA and my friend, Bruce Orlov. Over to you, Farhan.
Thank you very much for being here, Francis. We greatly appreciate it. Now moving on to today's presentation. Digital adoption has accelerated across every industry due to the pandemic, and the power and utilities industry is no exception. Today's discussion will provide practical insight to shift the industry's mindset from a hydro distributor to an energy partner. We'll explore why we need to move digital first and how to bring this to life to prepare for the future of the energy sector. Today in the Conversation Series, it's my pleasure to welcome Salesforce and IBM, Both are leaders in the energy transition, working closely to consult and implement digital strategies with energy and utility companies across Canada to improve their customer experience and employee engagement to meet rising demands and transform their business. Today's webinar is sponsored by Salesforce, a leader in the forefront of technology to help energy and utility companies to reimagine their business with energy and utilities cloud. With their single flexible platform, they have helped companies like Engie go digital with secure solutions that adapt to scale for the future of energy and turn their customer choice into competitive advantage. We'll dig into this more in our conversation today. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our virtual stage today's panel of speakers. I'm pleased to welcome from Salesforce, Ronald Starville, Distinguished Enterprise Architect, Energy and Utilities, Salesforce. Peter Campbell, Principal Solutions Architect at Salesforce, and from IBM, Gary Wasselin, Partner Utilities at IBM Consulting, and Bruce Orloff, Partner Energy and Utilities at IBM Consulting. Together, they'll bring their practical experience to dive into the trends driving the energy and transformation in Canadian utilities and share best practices on how companies can leverage this as an opportunity to amidst disruption. Looking forward to this conversation. And before we kick it over to you, gentlemen, we'll first start this portion of the webinar with a panel discussion to get your points of view from both a technology and consulting perspective. So to get started, we'd like to explore the energy transformation and trends driving it. Gary, let's start off with you. From your consulting experience, what are the key factors and trends you've observed?
Sure. So from my perspective, the two biggest drivers are stakeholder expectations and continuous drive to improve efficiency. So let me just talk really quickly about each of those. Stakeholder expectations. So each of us as individuals has experienced, the impact of digitization. Think about the way we use technology day to day and how that's changed our lives. Everything from, banking, shopping, how we consume information, news, weather, sports, how we communicate with one another, whether it's one-on-one or in social groups. The technology has clearly changed how things happen. And forget 20 years ago. Think about how things have changed just over the last 3 to 5 years. And for each of us, it impacts our expectations regarding digitization in practically everything that we do. So the best digital experience I've had becomes my expectation of all digital experiences that would follow it. So if you think about Uber, for example, I know exactly where my driver is. I know what time my ride will show up curbside. When I deal with a utility, I want the same experience, whether I'm waiting for a technician to show up on a service upgrade request or it's responding to an unplanned outage. I really like information real time on my phone and to the same level that I can get through other providers. And, it's a tall order for utilities to deliver that, but that's what customers are looking for. And it's not just our customers, it's also our employees. Because if you think about how we use technology in our day-to-day lives, we don't want to take a giant step backwards when we show up to do our jobs. We want the same enabling technologies that allow us to deliver our jobs day to day. And it actually can become a differentiator in terms of attracting and retaining high-performing talent. They want to work where they've got the tools to do the best job. So that's stakeholder expectations. The other driver is operational efficiency. Of course, every enterprise is looking to maximize profits and dividends for their shareholder, and it doesn't matter, whether that shareholder is a municipal or provincial, municipally owned utility, or it's an investor-owned utility. They all have the same expectations, and the executive and management are looking to deliver against those expectations. So to the extent that implementing digital solutions can help improve efficiency, drive out costs, transform and move towards customer self-serve, anything that can be done that helps lower operating costs is certainly a key driver around digital transformation. And I'd add one more, and it's not applicable to all utilities, but certainly the consolidation in the industry is another driver. There's clearly utilities out there who have a long-term strategy of a growth through acquisition, and there's a number of utilities who are acquisition targets. Clearly, as a seller, someone's looking to realize best value when they sell the utility. They also understand that their regulator is looking for improved customer service and performance. And that's all a function of who are the potential acquirers and what have they done to build the kinds of platforms that allow them to onboard new utilities, do it efficiently. Obviously, you know, they need to be successful in the acquisition, so they want to be able to offer top dollar, but they need to be able to do it and be confident that they can still achieve the ROI that they're targeting. So obviously the advantage goes to utilities who are further down their transformation journey. So to me, those are probably the biggest things that are driving the kind of transformation that we're seeing over the last few years. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, Gary. That's exactly what I see as well. The only thing that I'd like to add that I see as well is about the need to increase the speed of change. One of the advantages of actually going ahead with the digital transformation is the ability for organizations to change very rapidly, demands from the market coming through, competitors, whatever the drivers are, is a real reason for companies to step up their digital transformation efforts.
So I would just add to that, Ron, because I agree, the change, right? So how do you do it? You enable your employees, and Gary mentioned a little bit, enable your employees with tools that allow things to occur quicker, right? Well, you got to digitize, you got to give the tools, take the tools out of the, the centralized IT, still have governance with IT, but give some tools, some abilities to your employees to be able to drive that change.
Absolutely, empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great ideas. Got to get those ideas into action quickly.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks everybody for your comments. We'll move on to the next discussion point. So, Bruce, you were mentioning, given these prevailing factors and trends, it's evident that the energy transition is inevitable. Let's start with you, Bruce, for this next question. Why is digital transformation so crucial right now to meet customer expectations in this industry?
Okay, so I'm going to add on to some of the things that Gary said, of course, and Ronald as well. But I'd say firstly, because the Gen Z and the millennials, well, they expect nothing less, right? And they represent a large and a growing proportion of the customer base. And customers, especially these, want an energy partner who's proactive in informing, helping, to reduce their carbon footprint, excuse me. So let me just share some stats and insights that I gained when I was at this the CEA Powering Partnership Summit last week in Ottawa, which it was amazing to be in person for the first time in 20 months to see some people. But there were some interesting stats there. In a North American survey just done, I think it was earlier this year, about 2/3 of the customers believe it's on the onus on their utilities to drive sustainability and energy conservation, but only 13% believe they're doing anything at all. So it's staggering, right, in terms of what they think is going on. 61% agree providers should help consumers use energy in the most efficient way at the most optimal time. And I think this is most telling. 54% of Gen Zers and 41% of millennials would allow utilities to control home devices if paid, versus only 26% for Gen X and 15% for boomers. So you can see the dichotomy between the various generations. And then bring it a little closer to home, there's about 71% of Canadians want their utility to provide advice on how to conserve and use energy efficiently. Now, of course, utilities want to help customers decarbonize and navigate this space. And the only way to address this new breed of customers and achieve climate change and sustainability objectives is to start or accelerate, as the case may be, your digital transformation now. So if we go back quickly just to the customer perspective, as Gary mentioned, customer expectations are changing. So utilities need to understand the customer better by leveraging data to personalize interactions, whether it's bill inquiries, changes to accounts, personalized offerings. And in that way, utilities need to enhance the digital channels to seamlessly serve customers on the channel of their choices, and to have that sort of digital first, allowing customers to interact with utilities where they want, when they want. Gary sort of mentioned that as well. Do anything and from the phone as well. This will drive self-service from a customer perspective, reduce operational costs, etc. And that's really where the customers want. But they also want to know that, well, if I do want to talk to a call agent, I can do that, and I don't have to repeat myself. So everything I may have put in through my phone is actually there in front of them in the screen. So that sort of 360-degree view of the customer. It doesn't matter how they call, if they change, is going to be there for them at all times. And then I'd like to just shift very quickly to sort of the topic of environment and sustainability. Especially today, we've seen it at COP, and I mean, it's probably the top, I think it's the top issue globally about certainly the drive for sustainability. And customers expect their energy companies or their energy partners, however you want to call them, to establish and achieve sustainability goals related to carbon emissions, renewable integration, promotion and integration of EVs and solar for their customers. And this can only be achieved through digital transformation. By doing so, this will, drive net zero emissions, hopefully, result in fewer and more efficient truck rolls, which of course will, be a cost saving for utility, but also reduce emissions. Better predicting outages, dispatching crews, enabling renewables by understanding and managing the demand and supply, and also, predicting and simulating the impacts of projects, whether that's construction on the distribution, transmission, or generation side, and how it impacts the environment. So ultimately, digital transformation will elevate the brand image. And I think the bottom line is, if you do not change, your customers will find new ways to source energy that will ultimately result in lower revenues on an ever-growing cost of assets and infrastructure. So it's like, that's why they need to act now, because I think that's important too. Not just that has to be done, but it has to start now. So anyone else want to sort of jump in on top of that?
Just one quick thing to add, and you sort of touched on it. We're all looking for those types of changes from our local utility that we buy our electricity from. If they don't fulfill what we're looking for, it creates a void in the market. And there's third parties who will step in and provide some of the tools and technology that help consumers to reduce their carbon footprint, reduce their spend, et cetera. And it really is a battle for ownership of the customer relationship, because in an extreme world, the utility really loses their relevance to that customer. So it's a matter of, make the changes that your customer base are looking for, and do it before someone else does it for them.
Ron, did you have a comment that you want to share?
No, absolutely. I think Bruce and Gary have covered it 100%.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next discussion. So there's a lot of value to unlock through a digital transformation, but how do we ensure the rollout is successful given the investment, time, and resources needed? Ron, given your experience leading digital transformation projects at Salesforce for customers, let us start this question with you. What are key factors to set up a digital transformation project for success, and any advice on overcoming any cultural resistance to change?
Yes. Digital transformation is not easy. Let me put it out there at the beginning. And a lot of people think that digital transformation is all about technology, but actually it includes so much more. It includes people, process, data, and technology. All need to be taken into consideration. And of those 4 components, they're all required to be able to say, I have done a successful digital transformation initiative. But first, before I go into some of the key things that I think need to be right, it's important to have the right executive sponsorship. You need to find someone within the organization that have seen the benefits from that digital transformation, and that person needs to be the sponsor of the initiative, because it is a bumpy road. It will go up and down, and that rock solid digital transformation sponsor is absolutely essential. Now, if you then look into what else needs to go right, I'll start off with people, because people make things happen. And if you think about the organization, you might have 3 groups within the organization. A group of people that actually say, I want to get involved. I can see the opportunity for further self-development of this digital transformation. And there will be a group of people that are much more cautious and have a wait and see attitude. But you also have to recognize there are some people within the organization that very much have a negative towards a digital initiative, and resist throwing rocks from outside into the initiative itself. So being aware of these groups is important enough before you start, as you prepare yourself. And there's 3 priorities effectively that I can see to manage those different groups. Number 1 is communicate. 2, communicate. 3, communicate. I can't stress it even more than that. It's very clear to be on your objectives, the reason why you're doing the digital transformation, reporting the progress, and very importantly, celebrate success. And that's not something that communication that needs to happen at the beginning of the initiative. That needs to happen throughout. We're able to communicate with all the various players within the organization. It is absolutely important to continue all parties involved with those regular updates. Now, if you then look into process and data and technology, the other components of digital transformation, and you then think about that's a lot of change that needs to happen. And then you need to think about how can I manage the risk associated with a massive, big digital transformation initiative. One of the ways you can do this is by breaking it down. An example is to start a new sales process for one single product only as the first step in your digital transformation journey. Learn from the experience. Make corrections on technology, process, or people when it's not quite right. Then add the next step of the process or add another product. And slowly but surely, incrementally, through an agile delivery methodology, you will be able to deliver the whole journey for all products over a period of time. But it's managing the risk of the introduction of new technology and processes in that way. You sort of make it much more manageable. Another example, if that's not possible, one of the other examples that I've seen working for one of our customers is around starting very, very small by creating a challenger brand altogether as a separate organization. So it has its own people, brand, processes, and technology, and start with one single friendly customer and follow it through the process and learn from any adjustments that you need to make. But slowly add more customers and functionality. And that's really helping you to growth in a very controlled manner. Again, learn from the experience and make adjustments if required. Both approaches lowers the risk of starting a new digital transformation initiative, because sometimes it is something very large. Nobody's willing to do this massive multi-million-dollar implementation that take 6, 9, 12, 18 months, 2 years, whatever it might be. But start off with something much more smaller. Agree a small budget. Then if successful, if this new initiative, if this new way of working is proving to be successful, add more budget. And that way you continue to have this lean, agile way of actually delivering change and keeping the risk under control. Now, one last point I would like to raise regarding this is about that we already talked about slightly, about customer and employee experience. I can't stress the importance of the employee experience specifically, because in the past, we've seen training of employees was a large activity and a big obstacle in any new implementation. Now, what you can do in digital transformation is the ability to make it super easy for people to use the system and use the processes. And what my experience is that once a team is successful, and with regular positive internal marketing that is required, this communication again, it creates this positive atmosphere and buzz within the organization that attracts the right resources from within the organization, and the initiative will then grow. So that's my view on that one. Any other views on that one from the panel?
I wanted to, yeah, I thought that was great, Peter, Ronald, excuse me, and I agree with you. And I wanted to add, like you talked about sort of change agents or the need to communicate. And what we found also, like organizational change management is critical, right, to the success of a project. And what we found is that we try to engage or have our customers or clients engage, take those detractors, make them the change agents, make them the ones who are like, no, I don't want change. But if you actually give them that sort of power and say, wow, I can really change the way I do my job. It's more efficient, or I enjoy it more. I think that really helps. So it's really taking those adversarial type folks and turning them into your sort of the people who are going to help move the company forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the panel before we move on to the next point? Great.
You're on mute.
Thanks, folks. Sorry, did I hear a question?
I thought they covered it well. I'm just keeping an eye on the time.
Perfect, yeah. All right, moving on to the next discussion. It's undeniable with the current trends, the energy transition is here, and digital transformation projects are happening across the industry. From what you're seeing working with customers in the energy and utilities, how are they altering their operations through technology and digitalization? And this one I'll open up to anybody if anybody would like to take a crack at this one first.
Yeah, I just want to throw something in that I've seen working really, really well with regards to the operational processes. And what we have seen in the past, where the conversation that we had with customers was very much scripted through questions and answers. The new digital transformation allows to have that dialogue with the customer much more on a personal level. It's a much more open, more humane conversation with the customer. And that's where the agent already has a solid amount of information, even before possibly the customer actually is able to ask the questions that they might have. The agent might already know, because the technology allows them to provide information in front of them to actually see this might be the reason why the customer is calling. And having this personal conversation is so much more of what we would like to have as humans, rather than this very constricted type of questions and answers type of dialogues that we are so used to. And I think that's absolutely a change that needs to happen on the operational side.
And I'll just add, one of the things we're seeing with our clients is a willingness to try things and, fail fast, but understand that this isn't the old way of delivering solutions. So our garage method really has us working very collaboratively with clients, generating a large number of ideas, germinating the ones that make sense, trying them out. Certainly a lot more appetite for a minimum viable product. I don't think you'd hear that phrase 5 years ago, but try something out. Let's see what works, and the things that are working, build upon them. But no longer starting with it's got to be a complete solution in iteration 1, and a willingness to do some things that don't pan out just to find the golden nuggets.
And I think also one thing that everyone has to be conscious of, utilities, or doesn't matter the industry. It's like you're not going to digitize or transform or do stuff just to do it, like just to take something that's analog and make it digital. Really, it's an opportunity. So take like a new approach to how you do your business, not just taking the old stuff and digitizing, but really changing the way business is done. Change the processes. Take advantage of the fact that now you know not only know where the data is, know what it means. Can you take action on it? But change the way you were doing your processes in the past.
Couple other things I'll mention if I can, Ron. So one of them is because of COVID, this has really changed the way that these companies do business. And for example, their call center agents or the salespeople need to be anywhere, right, and work from anywhere. So digitizing and having a single source of truth, or what we call a single pane of glass, so they have a complete view of the customer wherever they are, so they can be anywhere, with integrations to backend systems, and be able to answer those customer calls, immediately. So that's been a big thing. And then, there's been a lot of talk about smaller initiatives. I see every day, different companies doing initiatives on things like low income. How do you deal with low income folks, right? And how do you do that in a kind and easy manner? So that's been really big. And then all the sustainability and the EV charging and all that, which I think Gary was mentioning before, where people are going out and they're buying these point solutions to do this, right? But what that does is just creates more silos. If you think about it, it really does. So you want to have that foundation, that one place where you can go and handle anything as far as whether it's energy efficiency, sustainability, clean energy, you name it. It can all be done in one platform. I think that's the goal.
Great point, Peter. Absolutely agree. And what you can see that information, that central glass of pane that Peter was talking about, is not only for the call center agent, but actually can be used by the field engineer as well at the same time. So they're all using the same data and having the same information. So it doesn't matter who you're talking to within the company. Everybody has got that same view of that customer, which makes it so much more better for the experience of a non-customer perspective.
So just on that point, Ronald, because I was just going to mention that the new customer service agents, not the new ones, but customer service agents are not just customer service agents. Technicians, linemen, those journeymen, they are the face to the customer I know there was a story, like, I think it was a few years ago, I can't remember. There was some outage in the Toronto area. So Toronto Hydro, people like the linemen, they're the ones who are talking to the customers. So if they have that information in their tablet, they could actually give them that information without them having to say, well, you better call, you know, the local utility because I don't have that information. So they're the new face, or one of the new faces to the customers.
Absolutely.
So data availability to all of the employees of the utility is critical.
Fantastic. Any last comments before we move on, gentlemen? Excellent. Well, that was fantastic. We will wrap up the panel section of this webinar and move on to a demonstration side. Again, I'd like to thank our panelists for that very interesting discussion, especially hearing different perspectives on preparing for the energy transition and how companies are transforming today. To wrap together the great insights shared today, I'm looking forward to welcoming Peter Campbell, Principal Solution Architect at Salesforce, to take us through a live demo to show firsthand how technology can empower employees and meet customer expectations for the future of energy. Peter, we'll transition over to yourself.
Great, thank you. My screen jumped, so great. So I'm gonna be playing the part today of Mike, and Mike is an operations manager with a company called the Schultz Group. So Mike is in charge of a number of different buildings that the Schultz Group owns, and you know, he just got out of a Zoom meeting actually where his CEO has just announced an initiative to reduce their carbon footprint by a certain period of time. So they have goals that they have to get to pretty quickly to start reducing that carbon imprint on footprint on for the Schultz Group. So as part of this, you know, Mike can log in. So he logs into the utility site, you know, kind of like my account, if you will, and he can do a number of things from there. And when he's thinking about getting on board with this sustainability program, you know, he wants to find out what he can do. So he can look up what nice thing about Salesforce is they have this new sustainability cloud, which can really work with the energy and utilities cloud to really tell a company how they're doing across the board on you know, the climate and sustainability. So if you look here, he's looking down through, you could see the total carbon footprint and kind of where things are happening, right? For example, the office and fleet vehicles are certainly contributing the most here. You can go ahead and expand that and go down a little bit more. And again, you'll see down here, you know, building consumption, energy use across the board, and then this total carbon contributors. Again, he'll just go down one more level where he can really break these out. And if you see down here, for example, he sees that there's certainly a lot that can be done within the buildings, right, within the offices, but there's also quite a bit that could be done in fleet. So we won't worry about the private jet and the rental cars, but the fleet is certainly causing an issue. So another thing that he has for a tool here is he can come up and say, okay, let me explore a little. And in real time, he can do an assessment on, for example, fleet vehicles. So if he opens this up, you'll see that this is kind of giving, you know, the current vehicles, the savings and the payback, you know, based on what they're using for vehicles. And if he starts adding things, so for example, I could put in, and this is all configurable, but I could put in what the price per gallon is today, you know, kilowatt per hour, the capital investment we've made. And then you see behind, under here, he already has the small delivery truck vehicles in here. They go about 30 miles a day. Typically, they get about 10 miles to the gallon. There's 4 of those. That's, you know, 1,200 gallons. And here's the kilowatt equivalent of that. I can also take this and add another row. Say, okay, well, let's see what we can do if we electrify more vehicles. So let's go to, you know, trucks, for example, larger trucks, and they go 35 miles a day, and they're down at 9 miles to the gallon, and we'll put that at 6. So again, he sees a real-time computation that tells him exactly what his savings are going to be, what the payback is going to be. He can even increase his capital investment, for example, to $2 million, because he's going to be putting in charger stations and buying vehicles. And you can see that payback is pretty quick on that. So just some tools that he's great to have Salesforce that allows him to do this type of thing and to try to meet those initiatives that his CEO put forward. So what Mike's going to do, he's going to reach out. He already has reached out to Lucy, who is his account executive over at the utilities company. So she's been working with Mike for a while. So they're going to get together next week to try to figure out, where they can find some savings and how they can electrify their vehicles. So I'm going to switch roles here. I'm going to go over to the console. It's a C&I console for commercial and industrial accounts. And we're going to the Schultz group. So when Lucy comes in, she understands that she's working on, she got the message from Mike that they want to get together. Great. All right, so she could start doing her own analysis. And, what you're looking at here is a console. So Lucy sees everything about this customer. They have 5 service accounts, 4 opportunities. If they have cases open, anything that, what we were talking about, that single pane of glass, right? Their bills, their statements, everything, even, things like their relationships. So how do those different buildings, right, or service points match up here? So, and I can go into any one of those, but one of the things that Lucy wants to do is she wants to invite her whole team onto an account planning session. And one of the ways that she can do that is through Quip. So she's going to open up a Quip document, and they could talk back and forth. Everybody from Cindy to Lucy to John, they can all talk back and forth as far as collaborating on this opportunity. And down here we see that we have a linked document, and I'm going to pull that up. Lucy will pull it up, and she can quickly see a lot of things. What's the purpose of the account plan, executive summary, things like that. And then once this comes up, you can see any reports within it. You can talk back and forth with people. It's going to capture those conversations within the document, see all information, even look at reports, right? So she can quickly see that one of their premises, their service locations, 120 Park Street, has some pretty good spikes, especially, in the summer. So great. Okay, there's something that she can do about that for sure. So she's thinking possibly energy efficient heat pumps would help here. So I'm going to close that, and I'm going to go directly to that service point. So here's the service point. We have all the information about that service point. For example, the meter information, the location, average monthly usage, etc. And so she can go right into that and take a look at what's going on with that service point. And then she has a savings calculator that she can start looking at other products and other energy efficiency products that can help her, help her customer. So I'm going to go ahead and add a measure or a product, right? So she's going to say, all right, let's talk heat pumps here. I think this would be a good idea. And these ones are Dakin's, and I can get Energy Star data. So fill in those numbers for me. And all I really need to do is add the number of units. So let's say it's 5. So we're looking at 5 units we think we can replace and help them in their consumption. And then I can go ahead and calculate those savings in the rebates. And if I look up top, it'll tell me how much I'm going to save in kilowatt hours, and also an estimated rebate, for those 5 units. So she says, that's great. That's good savings. That's a start. And then maybe we can attack other things for that, with that. But also she notices that she has a notification up here. So, Lucy's going to click on that notification, and it's from Jonathan, the engineer that she's working with out at Schultz Group. And Jonathan writes a note, says, fleet electrification may be a good opportunity for the customer. The feeder has enough capacity headroom to support the load. Let me know if you need any additional input. So great. So now she has a plan. She can meet with Mike on next week and start going through fleet electrification with him. That's really just a matter of starting a process within Salesforce to create an application for them and going through that process and showing them how much money they would save. So real quick, I know there was a brief demo, but I wanted to give you an idea of how collaboration works together, how sustainability works with the Energy and Utilities Cloud and Salesforce, and how you can really make impacts in a short period of time, helping those customers meet those sustainability needs.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that demonstration, Peter. That was inspiring to see how technology is helping our industry to transition into energy partners and offer a customer-first experience. So thanks again, Peter. Before we head off into Q&A with our panel of experts, I wanted to share with you two key resources provided by Salesforce and IBM to dig deeper into these two partners and how they can help you get started on your digital transformation. Take home the IDC Market Space 2021 report focused on utility customer experience. You'll see why Salesforce was named a leader for CX expertise with its pre-configured end-to-end utility solution that is used by over 500 clients today. We want to leave you with two key resources to take home to dive in deeper on Salesforce technology with the latest IDC Market Space 2021 report. The second resource to take away today is the latest IBM State of Salesforce report that highlights how the best companies are using Salesforce solutions to tackle the new climate to drive their business outcomes. With that, we'll transition to our Q&A portion. I'll invite our panelists back on screen now for some questions from our audience. And again, to our audience, a reminder to please type in your questions in the questions function on your screen. I'll ask them as they are received. So to kick things off, our first question was asked during the presentation. Regulated utility sector restricts customer choice. And so what is the drive for them to adopt new and efficient customer service ways? They know customers have nowhere else to go and are stuck with them. So I'll ask that to anybody who'd like to tackle that first.
I'll take the first step because I was thinking about it because I saw the question come in. I'm going, well, true, of course, it's regulated. It doesn't mean that there's no retail, right? So if we look at Alberta, right, it's deregulated in that regard, and other jurisdictions in Canada, not as much, of course, but consumers always have a choice, right? It might be that I'm in Ottawa, so Hydro Ottawa, they're my utility, right? So I will have a distribution line from Hydro Ottawa, but I might choose to put solar panels on my roof or to have some other geothermal generation. But I would like to think that I can turn to Hydro Ottawa to say, hey, can you help me? I'd like to, be more efficient. I'd like to reduce my carbon footprint. So I want to get the advice, as I mentioned earlier, from my utility because I trust them. I trust them the most, and I think that trust needs to be increased. So I think although we might be clearly a very heavily regulated industry, there's still choice. And we want to be, I think our utilities should be the ones who are helping to influence what choices customers make.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on, Bruce, with regards to directly getting electricity. Yes, it's regulated, but all the other stuff, the heat pumps that Peter mentioned in his example, the generation capabilities through solar or wind, that is a choice that customers have. And by making this digital transformation so easy, the customer should be able to say, okay, and this is so easy to work with this particular customer, I'm going to go with all my energy needs. And that's a real driver towards for any of the energy companies to actually do a lot more than with regards to digital transformation to make it easy. The other thing that is really important, and I mentioned it before, is when you look at it from a customer perspective, absolutely there's a reason why, but also from an employee perspective. This is the attracting the right staff and maintaining the right staff, retaining the staff is extremely important in this very competitive market. And that's not a driver for any of the utility companies to actually do this digital transformation?
I sort of had three answers to this question. The first one is, with superior customer service, the whole goal is to reduce call handle times, reduce the number of calls, drive down the operating costs of servicing those customers. So that to the extent that you're offering good customer service, you're meeting all of those objectives. So that's the first one. I've seen several of my utility clients highly motivated by staying out of the Globe and Mail. The last thing you want is a disgruntled customer base and problems, broad-based problems serving those customers, and the churn that it creates, not just for frontline workers handling the calls, but everyone in the management and executive organization jumping in to deal with complex problems. So keeping out of the newspaper is a huge issue. And I go back to the third thing is, what I mentioned off the top, which is acquisition. Sure, we've got several Canadian utilities who have growth by acquisition objectives, and they're acquiring US utilities, and they're not always acquiring in markets that are regulated to the same extent that we are in Canada. And to be a successful acquirer really does, it requires some of the leading capabilities, because it really is competition when you're looking to buy up a utility and they've got several choices on acquire. Being a leading utility matters in that game for sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much for answering that question. On to the next one. Are you seeing any uptick in C&I customers wanting utilities to partner with them on reporting or tracking their ESG or CSR goals?
Yes. I can elaborate more on that, but I would actually say that then our customers are going out to their large customers to say, we can help you with your, with understanding your data or partnering to help in that. I know in Alberta, for example, there's a lot of synergies in that area where they're looking to sort of help with sustainability goals. So the whole ESG side for sure. So it's a big thing, and it's a huge area of growth, I'd say, as well for our utility customers in the West in particular. I'm seeing that.
Yeah, I agree. I see that, and this side of the world as well, in Europe, there's a huge demand specifically for C&I customers, that utilities working together of actually driving forward their zero carbon targets that they might have in order to be able to have distributed energy generation and storage capabilities that your energy utility provider can help you with. So I see that is a growing area. There's massively. The other thing that Peter mentioned with regards to in the demo is about Sustainability Cloud. So Sustainability Cloud is a new product of Salesforce, and I see more and more uptake specifically from C&I customers to understand what their carbon take is with regards to scope 1, 2, and 3 that is able to actually capture and actually help the customer prepare a plan of how to get to their zero carbon targets by a particular time. So that's something that is absolutely a growing need that comes through from customer demand.
Well, that was exactly what was brought up actually last week at the Partnering Summit. It was, I forget her name, from Shell, who leads Shell in Canada. She was talking about the scope 1, 2, and 3. So all three of them, and it's a balance to be able to get to that net zero emission. But you think, hearing that from Shell, right? You don't think of that, but that is clearly with the direction where large industrial customers are going. So they need help to try to do it themselves, but they need help to get there.
So I'm actively involved in the Shell discussions on this side. Yeah. So yes, very much a very lively topic at the moment.
Perfect, thank you very much. The name of the person was Susanna Pierce.
There we go. Right.
Yeah, it was a great presentation. Yeah. So we got another question coming in. How are utilities finding ways to fund their digital transformations?
I mean, I'll take first stab at it. They're looking for ways to reduce the spend on sort of traditional IT, whether that is, migration to cloud and driving out some operating costs and shutting down internal data centers, moving to more efficient delivery models in IT, working with third-party providers that can help drive out efficiency. and also looking for self-funding models. And back to what I mentioned earlier about our garage method, part of the idea here is generating ideas and examining business case early and adopting the ones that provide, self-funding. And as soon as you start working on a portfolio, the first couple of digital changes are used to fuel the next ones that come beyond them. It's absolutely a way that we're working with our clients to take down that barrier of getting started with digital transformation.
Yeah, what I would like to add to that, Gary, is around the fact that a lot of the utilities are looking at it from a commodity perspective, but as we already started to talk about, beyond commodities, so energy generation capability, which requires additional revenue streams potential that utilities have. In order to have these efficiencies that you were talking about, by having this self-serve capability for your customers and the cost saving that you make, and the cost saving that you make on the IT side and the IT spending, then those revenue and people can then be used for the additional capability that you need to offer to your customers with regards to anything to this non-commodity side that you would like to help. So it's really moving around the resources that you have from the commodity side to the non-commodity side to be able to sustain moving forward. And that's a major big driver for a lot of the utilities to do this digital transformation.
And I would add, not really on the funding side, but just in general, what we're seeing with regards to vehicle to grid, net metering. Well, how are you going to do? In order to do that, you need to enable it through digital transformation and be able to then offer, back to the previous questions, well, you may be able to offer, from a transactive energy perspective, offer the customers money for them actually feeding load into the grid, feeding generation into the grid. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's something that's now and happening. I think there was even discussion in the news just the other day about offering opportunity to, maybe it was Hydro One, I can't recall, where they're looking to enable vehicles to power into the grid when there's outages. I can't remember, I saw it just the other day. So it's definitely happening, and it's, experimentation now, minimum viable products, proof of concepts, that kind of thing, but it's the future.
Yep.
Yeah, I've actually seen that several places recently, Bruce. Power back to the grid from vehicles. There's a lot of Canadian utilities looking at what's it going to take to operationalize that, and what's the business case behind it.
Yep, vehicle to grid is something that is coming, and it's already here, and it's just going to expand even further. And then if you think about some customers will not have a vehicle, an electric vehicle, but actually they see more and more investments in home battery storage capability, and actually making use of that additional capability to store energy on a local level and sell that on as a service from a utility perspective, and have that flexibility is something that I can see. Now, you might say that might not impact that much but if you think about it from a high level, from an aggregated level, that is actually adding up to quite a significant amount of storage capacity that you're generating.
I actually think it's going to be a significant contribution in the future. It's where we're headed for sure.
Yeah.
Especially by 2035, when there's going to be only electric vehicles manufactured by many of the vendors, right? So, I don't know.
Half of us on this call have probably already bought our last gas vehicle.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to get my EV, but supply chain and not utility.
Soon, yeah. Okay, one more question. What is a good foundational first step in utility digitalization that sets you up well for progress? Would you say to start by winning over employees first, like with mobile platforms or better UX, or to provide some customer value first, like a better customer self-service experience?
I think both are extremely important, and I don't think you can make a choice between the two. I think you have to do one. But if I'm forced, Farhan, to say one, then I would say customer. Go for your customer first and say, what can you do to make it easier for your customer to deal with you? And actually really focus on that very easy access to all the information that they're after, the easy self-serve, when I want to access this, through what kind of channel I prefer to do as a customer. I would focus on that, because I think that will have a direct impact on actually the feedback and the communication and the celebration of the success of actually digital transformation. But as I mentioned, you need to have both.
Yeah, I would say, you know, for the employees, I don't know how many places I've been into where they say, the employees say that they're using 9, 10, 11, 12 different applications to do their job, right? So that's going to help the customer and the employees and onboarding new employees where they're only dealing with one application that's tied to these back-end systems to, you know, to do it. So that's a big one. And I agree, you know, focus on the customer first, but certainly the employees are going to get a lot of benefit and efficiency from it.
Excellent. Anything else to add, gentlemen?
I didn't want to go first, so Ronald, I'm glad you went first because I was thinking the same thing. You really do have to do both. And I think, you know, Peter and Ronald, you both covered off some good reasons why each of them are important from day one. So my answer was you have to do both as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to answer those questions. I don't see anything else coming in, so we'll wrap it up there. Before we let folks go today, I just want to offer some concluding remarks. As this is our final conversation series for 2021, we will be back with more topics and discussions from our industry leaders and experts in 2022. You can find all of CA's future events and webinars in our monthly newsletter, Current Affairs, or you can go to the news and events section on our website at electricity.ca. In closing, I would once again like to thank our presenters from Salesforce and IBM. Thank you so much for that fantastic discussion and answering all those questions. We greatly appreciate it. And we'd also like to thank our audience for joining us today and for sending in those questions, as well as